Hi, and welcome to CTV. I'm your host, Cynthia Tapia. And on today's episode, I have a very special guest. You may recognize her from Arizona local channels 3 and 5, and Good Morning Arizona, and Mix 96.9. She's also the founder of the Book Publishing Academy and a #1 selling best author, Miss Janine Hernandez. Well, Janine, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm excited to have you here today. You have a very special gift to drop off. We're going to discuss your new book, The Light in Times of the Darkness. Let's talk about this book. What does this mean for you? Where did this come from? What was your inspiration behind it?
So The Light in Times of Darkness is super special to me simply because it represents two parts, right? The light, which is what I've done to heal, but I also talk about those dark times and what got me to the light. So I split the book up in two parts and I kind of walk you through my journey. And I'm just excited to be able to share my vulnerability and share my story with you guys.
So I actually got to read the exclusive before this actually drops in the fall, and I'm a fan. I love it. It was very inspirational. I feel like I got to know a lot more of you and your journey. Like you said, you talked about a lot of dark times. I think we all can relate to going through dark times in life, but then you give a lot of inspiration and a lot of hope on how you've overcame that. Specifically, you dealt with postpartum depression. And then you also talk about being in a narcissistic abusive relationship.
Yep.
And let's talk a little bit about those things, like the trauma itself and healing. First of all, I'm sorry that you went through all those things. They're such horrible things, but they also define your strength and make you who you are.
Yes.
So let's start there. What made you want to start writing a book about your trauma and your past experiences?
So for me, a lot of people follow me on social media or they just look up to me for inspiration. And I feel like I was always afraid of being vulnerable because I was afraid that people would look at me as a victim. So I tend to show the successes and I tend to show the end result. I never really share what I had to go through to get there. Last year was one of the hardest years that I had been through in my life. I was, like I said, in a narcissistic abusive relationship. I was depressed. There are moments where I even thought about this life, and I felt that it was important for me to just be honest with my audience and let them know that I as well go through the same things that they go through, right? Except I kind of spin it in a different way. I show them how I can still shine and still be a light and still inspire other people despite all of those dark moments that I had gone through.
Wow, so that's very inspirational because I know personally for me, when I go through things, I tend to shut down. I tend to want to go dormant and cut myself off from society. And you have to battle that. You have to constantly battle being present or continuing your day to day or your life or, being your own boss and entrepreneur. So hats off to you. That's amazing. And I think that you touched on something. You're always showing the better side of you. How do you find that strength to pull up every day and show up without letting that depression or all these things that are going on around you affect that in your life?
So one of the things that I tell myself every day is that I have to pour into myself first before I can pour into other people. And I show up for a lot of people. There's a lot of people. So I just try my best to spend time with myself and work on, at first I identify those areas that I need to really pay attention to, and then I try to work on those. But like you said, sometimes most people kind of go dormant and they don't want to deal with certain things. And, in the book, I share that. There was a moment, I would say about 3 months, where I went, I kind of just dug into my little hole and I'm like, okay, I need to deal with this and I need to heal. And I talk about that in the book.
Right.
So the outside world they were still seeing, Janine successful, all this stuff, but behind the scenes, I was really going through it.
And what did that healing process look like for you? Because I know it's different for everybody, but considering you're going through COVID, you're going through this horrible relationship that you're trying to come out of and heal from that. Your identity, I'm sure, is in crisis on who you are. Just feeling really low, not really sure what life is going to bring. So I know when you're in those dark places, you can't see the light just yet, but what did that healing process look like for you? How did you start to identify more of spending time with yourself and showing up?
It was hard. I'll be completely 100% transparent with you. Healing is ugly, but beautiful at the same time. There were a lot of times where I couldn't even get out of bed. I mean, days that I didn't have my son, like I was just in bed. A lot of crying, a lot of asking why, trying to find answers, educating myself, right, on abuse, educating myself on things that I had gone through in my childhood, figuring out how I can, move forward. I was going to counseling. I had a spiritual coach as well. So there was just a lot that went into that. But it was a good 3 months of just consistently working on myself every single day. A lot of journaling, a lot of tears. But once I got over that hump, it was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. Healing can be beautiful once you get over it.
Right. So you've had a metamorphosis of yourself and the journey, and that's kind of, I think, what you share in this book. From what I gathered, is you share all these dark times, and then you share how you went through it, how it impacted you and changed you. And I think that's important for the reader, to kind of have that outlook or that perspective of, one, I'm not alone. Someone else goes through day-to-day things with me, and then two, just maybe learning on how someone else's coping styles could help you, benefit you, in your own, wherever you're at with your process. So with that being said, that relationship, like how hard was that for you? Or, what was most challenging after going through that relationship and then having to write a book? Because you poured it all out in here.
I think the hardest part was coming to terms with what happened. Because when you're in a narcissistic relationship, you're just in it and you're blinded and you're gaslit so much, meaning someone is telling you that your reality is not real. So a lot of the times you're questioning yourself, and you are also like in your head, like, did this really happen? Did this even really happen, right? And so it's like the veil came off, and it's coming to terms with, oh my God, I did go through this abuse. And you start to feel a lot of guilt and anger towards yourself for allowing yourself to even be in that space. So the healing process, eventually you do get to a place where you are okay with yourself, and you're not placing blame on them or yourself, but you're just accepting it for what it is. I would say that was the hardest part, because it's like a tug of war, right? Like with your ego and with your soul. Yeah.
Okay. And then to be able to journal it or write it all and put all that pain or all that hurt into a book. And then how long did this process take you to write?
It took me, I would say, 2.5 to 3 weeks to write this book.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yes. I was writing about 1,000 words a day, and my goal was to have it done within 30 days. And I think I ended it by like the 21st day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Phenomenal. Good for you.
Thank you.
I'm glad this makes your 6th book.
Yes.
And let people know when they can actually put their hands on this.
So this book will be available October 15th, 2021, and I'm super excited. I will be having actually an event here in Phoenix.
Oh, tell us more. Where is this event going to be hosted at?
So it'll be hosted in Scottsdale. I don't have the actual location yet, but it'll be October 15th. So
okay,
you guys
so
are all
stay
invited.
tuned for more information on that.
Yep.
And then is this going to be like for pre-order? Is it going to be available in hardback copy or online?
Yes, it will be available for pre-order on Amazon.
Oh, that's going to be great. You guys be sure to get your copy. It's a good book. I read it. I loved it. Like I said, very inspirational and inspiring. And what else is coming with this book? I understand that you have like a project with this.
Oh, yes. So last year I had a vision that I was going to write a book, that I was going to have a rapper from my hometown create a song for me, and that we would create a music video. And this vision came to me, and I was like, okay, God, like that wasn't my idea. Like you obviously came up with this. What is this,
Right.
So I started writing the book, and I thought to myself, closed mouths don't get fed, right? So I need to just ask him. So I reached out to him, and I said, hey, are you interested in writing a song for my book? And he hopped on it. He wrote the song in like 2 or 3 days. and we're in the process of a music video now.
Wow.
So I definitely feel like I went through this situation. It was something that I had to go through on my journey, and now all the steps are just, everything is just come, it's like destiny. Everything is happening the way it's supposed to.
So that's different, actually, having a song to go with a book release.
Yes.
That's like a soundtrack almost, something you would see like with a movie, but that's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
And a music video. So what do you want to depict in this music video? Like, how is this going to come about? This isn't something you see all the time.
So I'm super excited about this music video, and we're going to touch on a lot of things in the video, but I really want you guys to be surprised. Just know that it's coming. I don't even know the release date yet, but just know it's coming, and it's going to be really good. It's going to be the soundtrack of the book.
Okay, so when you discuss things in the book from your trauma and the things that you had to heal from, you specifically touched on narcissism. What was that like for you, being in a narcissistic, abusive relationship?
It was very difficult because you are being told that your reality is non-existent. And so in a narcissistic relationship, there's a lot of hot and cold. And there's what's called love bombing, right? So everything is beautiful and everything's amazing, and they are sending you gifts, and you think that you are like on top of the world. And then the next day it's like, boom, no, you're being cursed at, you're being yelled at, you're being, abused verbally. And so it's very confusing because then the next day everything's perfect again. So it's a lot of up and down, hot and cold, a lot of great memories that you're always longing for, and you're like almost yearning and wanting those, but then it's like mixed in with verbal abuse. And then anytime that you try to address it and create boundaries, you're being told no, you're being shut down, you can't speak up. So I spent a good year of just feeling like I could never share my story, and like no one could understand what I was going through.
So a lot of confusion, a lot of control, a lot of wondering who you were, your identity being in jeopardy now, of no longer looking at yourself saying, no, I know this is for a fact. Now you're wondering because somebody that you love or that you actually consider is telling you that's not true. And so you take that with, everything trying to fix what you think is wrong.
Yes.
When did you realize that it was an abusive relationship?
I would say about 4 months in. One of my really good friends, I called her and I was just crying because he had screamed and yelled at me. And she was like, I think you need to look up narcissism. And she sent me a YouTube video. And I went down the rabbit hole. But then that night, I spoke with him and he was just normal. Like nothing had ever happened. And then I went right back into it. So I had an idea that that's what it was, and there were moments in the relationship where I would go back into YouTube University and like try and do my research, but I was blindsided most of the time. And it wasn't until I would say about a month or two prior to me leaving him that I finally like came to terms with, he's a narcissist and you need to get out.
And when did you finally decide to make that decision? What was the final straw for you where you had to draw that line?
He ended up cheating on me, and that I still wasn't ready to leave. And it's not that I wasn't ready, it's just I was so confused, and I was being gaslit, and I still had a lot of questions that I needed answered.
I want to stop you right there. What do you mean by gaslit for those who may not have experienced such abuse? What does that mean, to be gaslit?
So gaslighting means that you are experiencing something, but the person is telling you you're not. So I would say, why did you scream at me?
Almost like manipulation.
Yeah, I didn't scream at you. What are you talking about? You're just too sensitive. You take things too personal. Here we go again. And so it's a lot of, you start to question yourself of like, am I really too sensitive? Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I should, So a lot of times, there was a lot of times where I would get yelled at and I would just remain silent and have no emotion because I didn't want to upset them. You'll constantly feel like you're walking on eggshells. It was just one of the hardest
That is
times.
an exhausting, I'm sure, not a very good, confident feeling, especially a woman of your caliber who's this author, who's an entrepreneur, and who's, a founder of a book publishing academy. And then here you are being told all these things. So I'm sure that process within itself, to show up every day for your authors and then for yourself, and then this relationship taking a toll on you. What's one thing you would like to address with anybody who might be going through this?
you're not alone. And that's the problem, is that I felt alone. I wasn't expressing this to many of my friends or my family. I was kind of confused all by myself. And I was afraid to speak up. Because I was constantly being told that I couldn't, you know? And, I want to touch on what you said about my business. So I am very successful, and I know that I'm a very smart businesswoman, but he was constantly using that to his advantage. One day I was very smart and successful, and then the next day you're just stupid and you don't know what you're doing. And so I was constantly feeling like I was trying to live up to the expectations of someone else. And that caused a lot of depression, because I felt like I couldn't even be myself, I'm constantly like, is this good enough? No, okay, that's not good enough. Let me try again. Is this good enough? No, that's not good enough. And like I said, I am a published author, #1 best-selling author. I've been on the news. Like I've succeeded in a lot of things, and it's like that didn't matter. He would never give me my flowers ever.
So your accolades were never appreciated or even acknowledged, but you knew it. But when it's not coming from a person who's your source of supposed to be your person, that makes you start to wonder, question your self-worth, or why they don't see your worth when you know it. And then that kind of is a self-love, lack of self-confidence. So wow, that's a lot to endure. Would you consider yourself an advocate at this point?
Yes, because I started to speak up about this. TikTok was very helpful for me, because I would go on there, I'd make videos, some of them funny, some of them not, but shedding a lot of light on narcissism and being a survivor. And the more that I shared my story, the more people would DM me saying, wow, I went through that, and you are our voice. Like, you're speaking up for us, so continue to do it. And I remember I had a moment where I cried to God, and I was like, God, this just feels so uncomfortable to be speaking up about this. And God was like, do it anyways.
Well, there you guys have it. You heard it here first. Stay tuned for the release of the book launch with audio coming and a music video. So stay tuned. You heard it here first on CTV.